Hi, I'm Richard Vague with Tycos. Last week, President-elect Trump announced plans to impose a 25% blanket tariff on Mexico and Canada, declaring, quote, "This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country," end quote. The first thing to note here is that the U.S. is less dependent on trade than any other major developed country, a function of both the geographic distance from the U.S. to Europe and Asia, and the large size of our own domestic market. In the U.S. and China, imports to GDP are 14%, while in Japan they are 19%, in Germany 38%, in France 34%, in the UK 32%, and in India 19%. On the export side, the U.S. really lags. U.S. exports to GDP are 11%, while in China they are 19%, in Japan 18%, in Germany 42%, in France 33%, in the UK 30%, and in India 12%. As a result, the U.S. is somewhat less vulnerable to a trade war than any other major country. Obviously, this subject is now highly charged politically, and we try hard to be as neutral as possible on all these subjects because we have a lot we disagree with on both sides of the aisle. So while we don't want to add fuel to the fire, the simple truth is that historically, as we covered in detail last week, the U.S. has been one of the primary practitioners of protectionism through tariffs. And a trade deficit is reasonably deleterious to the U.S. private sector for the simple reason that the private sector, especially households, have to borrow to fund that deficit. In other words, folks are borrowing to buy those Mercedes, and those funds boost Germany's GDP in that case, not ours. We have long maintained that tariffs should be a tool, not a doctrine, and they were successfully used as such for most of U.S. history. And we have long maintained that the best path to a better trade balance is breakthrough products, genetic engineering, AI, and the like, not tariff policy. But tariffs are the topic of the moment and may be a necessary short-term ingredient to the overall negotiating mix. So let's plunge in a bit here. Why is President-elect Trump starting with Canada and Mexico? Well, because they're our largest trading partners, with China a close third. And we have large trade deficits with all three of these countries. Trade with Japan and the UK is far less than with these three countries. In fact, imports from the entire EU, France, Germany, Spain, and all the rest, are only a little more than the imports from Mexico alone. And surprisingly, the exports from Asia, not including China and Japan, in other words, just South Korea, Thailand, and the others, are only slightly less than the exports from the EU. How about South America and Africa? Well, all imports from Central and South America, not including Mexico, are relatively small, and imports from Africa are minuscule. So it's reasonable to expect the U.S. to tackle its trade imbalance roughly in the order of the magnitude of that trade. It is also reasonable to expect that these disputes will be disruptive and even inflationary over the short term, although historically when they've been employed that way, that has self-corrected. And it's not unreasonable to expect that the U.S. will have the stronger hand with any and all of these countries in its trade disputes. The immediate reaction has been interesting and underscores that point. Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank, almost immediately urged Europe's political leaders to cooperate with Donald Trump over tariffs and buy more products made in the U.S. And Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, almost immediately hustled down to Mar-a-Lago to engage on the issue with Trump. That's it for this week. Thanks.